All right, you are in the lounge. This is episode 6. I am joined by, man, this fantastic band, Windwaker. If you've never checked them out before, you need to do so, okay? This is Liam Guinane, who, I think just absolutely kills it as the lead vocalist for Windwaker. And I just find this so fascinating, Liam, because I was just telling you off air, I found you through my profession of covering the LA Rams. One of the people that I just happened to be followed by, Rams fan, made it so it showed up on my feed. You did a meet and greet. You got a picture with them or something in Anaheim, I believe. And I checked you out, and I was like, I think this is already one of my top 5 favorite bands.
That's incredible, and obviously it pays to do these meet and greets, not just for the people that are coming to these shows, but for also the people like yourself that just happen to stumble across us. So that's what a way to discover a band. That's awesome.
I know I have some wild discoveries. That's my favorite because you get like the video game stuff. Like, oh yeah, he was, that was in a soundtrack for a video game, or they were in a movie or a viral TikTok. No, this one takes the cake.
It also it creates that personal relationship that you have with a band, like when you find and discover it naturally like that, rather than like having like a friend or a family member just kind of like recommend you something and you're like, I'll listen to that eventually. But you've just discovered this like quite organically, and then you've created this relationship, which I think is a far more stronger way to connect with a band or an artist, So that's awesome.
I agree, man. And I told you my favorite band, Starset, I found them similar way, not with, somebody on my feed, but I saw the album cover, and don't judge everything like by its cover, but man, it's 2 for 2 with album covers. I saw Starset's first one. I saw, Hyperviolence, and I was like, that is the coolest art I've ever seen. And I was like, I got to check it out. I had a feeling, and then I was just like, right away, I was hooked. Break the Rules. I'm singing that, doing, errands around my apartment. I got my roommate who played it 60 straight times. Like,
wow.
I got one of my best friends. I got him into it. So, yeah, metalcore is a genre that I picked up very late in life. Sure. I'm 29, so within the last 2-3 years, I got into that genre. And you guys are just scratching the itch that I just have. Like, you have everything,
That's great.
So
that's the thing. Dope. We're not like we're not like a traditional sounding metalcore band. So I'm glad that we can offer something a little bit more to people that maybe are finding their entry point into the sound. But no, that's awesome, man. I'm so happy to be scratching that itch.
Hey. It took me a while to get into like the metal side, like the screaming and all that, of my life. And, I come from a classic rock household. Like, my dad is like, he does open mic night. He's done bands before, very classic rock oriented. So I found metal just on my own. Yeah. And I feel like the thing for me that, kind of turns me on to what you're doing, like the music you're putting out, is that melodic feel to it. It's why I like bands like Ice Nine Kills, because I like the singing to go with the screaming. And I feel like it's like, thunder and lightning, it just goes together so well. Absolutely. And you guys do just such a great job of it. But with that said, how are things, man? How are you doing? You dropped your brand new record. Well, it's not brand new anymore, but it was in July of last year. Yeah. Not long after I moved out. So I definitely know that record very well. I've probably listened to it like 100 times. But how are you? How are things?
I'm well. I'm very well. I've just gotten back from a New Year's holiday. I was away for 3 weeks. Traversing different countries in Europe, and I'm still a little bit jet lagged, but I'm happy to be here. I've had my first cup of coffee. I'm looking to maybe have a second one, but maybe after this we'll visit that. And no, I'm good. I'm excited to be talking to you. I'm excited that we've got the deluxe version of that record that you're talking about coming out really soon. Things are good. Things are good. Despite an uncertain time, it's trying to keep positive and try to focus on those positives. So no, I'm doing just fine. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And, with the record, I love that. First off, I have to ask, I mean, you probably are, it's probably asked this a million times. I'm a gamer. I saw The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker, because you can't type in your band name without The Wind Waker showing up.
Yeah.
Am I going in the right direction
Yeah,
here?
absolutely. The the band when they first started, geez, nearly 10 years ago, they couldn't come up with a name, and they quite literally locked themselves in a room for about 4 hours, trying to and they wouldn't let themselves out until they came up with the name. And someone suggested Wind Waker. Obviously, the Legend of Zelda game's sort of like Wind Waker, and we've
Yeah.
sort of just smashed the two words together and made one. But yeah, no, it's sort of in reference or in honor of the Legend of Zelda game. I mean, I'm a big. I grew up on Nintendo games. Played own Ocarina, two different versions of Ocarina of Time. I've always been a Mario boy. And as well as just like all games really. I love playing first person shooters. I love playing platforming games, action adventure games. So yeah, no, it is hard to it probably was a mistake for brand association, but at the same time, like, I think there is some video gaming aspect to our music that might appeal to fans like that. It wasn't some sort of strategy or marketing ploy to kind of like gain Nintendo fans or anything like that. But yeah, no, it sort of appeals to our interests as well. So, things happen for a reason.
There's like a video game sound in Fractured State of Mind. So I think it goes perfectly with
Yeah.
that, I think. That's the first thing I thought of too. I was like, wow, that's very video game sounding. And I mean, if I'm playing Call of Duty, I always have that, record playing, because I don't like, I can't play Call of Duty with like anything other than just music playing. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I totally, yeah. My roommate's probably, well, no, he's not tired because he got into the band because I was just constantly playing your record while playing Call of Duty.
They
So
just
you
had
just,
to. They had to like it. They were forced to, really.
yeah, exactly.
No, that's awesome. I I've I've always wondered how people can listen to music and play video games when, like, a game like Call of Duty, for example, that kind of requires like that sort of spatial
Oh
auditory
yeah.
awareness. You know what I mean? Like, I've always found that fascinating. I mean, I've definitely like I when we were sort of in the middle of like the COVID pandemic, I definitely got into a lot of Fortnite, and I'm sure a lot of people did. But
Oh yeah.
that when I was sort of playing long hours of that, I sort of tapped into that idea of sort of having music or something in the background. So yeah, it's always fascinating to me when I hear people say like, "Oh, yeah, I'm playing Call of Duty or I'm playing this," and I'm listening to your record. I think it does kind of enhance the mood a little bit. Maybe it gets people in a bit of a violent state. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, violent state of mind, if you will. No,
Maybe that's what. Yeah.
but no, I mean, hyper violence. Come on, you called it hyper violence,
Well,
so
that's true.
you
That's
know.
true.
But no, it just works. It gets you pumped. I like it. Yeah, if I was playing, like, I cover football, but if I was playing football, yeah, I'd be having The Wall or something like that, playing before a game. Like, that would get me
Yeah.
psyched.
Pump up song. We actually had a song from our last record before Hyperviolence show up on the NHL soundtrack.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we have.
Of course,
So
the
we
one NHL I didn't buy.
yeah 2023. And I had so
Oh,
many people when we were in the States last year asking me that I was introduced to the term shell. I think it's like their nickname for NHL. They call it shell or something like
they
that.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was news to me, but I'm now up with it. I know the lingo. Uh,
You a hockey fan now? Like, is it just
uh,
your?
I think I mean I've never watched a game, but I like the Bruins jersey that Happy Gilmore wears. So so
That's awesome. So, I mean, like, what is it? What has it been like being like an Australian band and everything, and coming to the States and traveling just all around and everything? Because I mean, you travel everywhere. I mean, you guys
Yeah.
are on tour. You guys are, paying your dues essentially, and you got another tour coming up. What is that whole process like?
I mean, it's definitely a dream, and it feels quite rewarding after the time we've spent kind of laying the foundations of the band. I mean, the band, as I said, the band's been around for, you know, a little bit over 10 years now. I've sort of been involved in and out of those 10 years, coming back more recently in 2022. And it's amazing to be able to come to the other side of the world, and have people, you know, singing along to the songs, having known about you for so many years, been waiting so patiently. I feel incredibly grateful to be in this position, because not all bands get to do that. And the fact that we're sort of broken out of Australia is like, it's quite a tucked away place, and we can be quite we can kind of create our own little echo chamber a little bit when it comes to music, and sometimes it's hard to break out of that. There's so many bands that have sort of conquered their own territory but never sort of gotten to see places overseas with their music. So to be in that position, I feel very, very grateful for that. It's awesome, and I can't wait to be back in the States. Everyone was so incredibly nice, incredibly hospitable. Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't have asked for a better first experience of your amazing country.
No, I mean, we appreciate that. And I think that's something, because there are bands out there, I won't name any, but there are bands out there that are like, nope, we're not going near the States. We play here. It's that simple. We're from here. So when you have like, a band such as yourself that's willing to go essentially above and beyond, that is not only appreciated, but I think people now, when they have their choice, like, oh yeah, my ticket budget or whatever is really slim here and I can only choose one or the other, they're probably going to go with the one that's more, on in
uncommon,
the know,
right? Like,
know?
you're not going to like see us like, every week, it's
yeah,
sort of,
exactly.
it's a special occasion, I guess, when we make it over there. And I suppose in a similar sense, it kind of feels that way sometimes with the more smaller to mid-tier bands coming over to Australia. We don't often get, everything that your country has to offer, or the UK, or, different parts of the world. It's a long way away. It's a long way to travel. And so it's in a similar way, Australians definitely appreciate it when we see a certain band come over. So I can definitely relate to what you're saying there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you just seem like you're a lover of music as well. Obviously, not just from like, oh yeah, this is my job, but like you seem like you really care just about being a musician, and maybe like, the paths that different people have walked so, you could get to where you are, and like the different, kind of stepping stones along the way. And I wanted to ask you, before I ask you how you got into all this, is there, maybe a band or two that really stick out to you? Like, this is my influence about how I got to this point.
Wow. I mean, you're totally right as far as my love for music and art, and I think the way in which I want to, at least my legacy to be, is to kind of progress that and push the envelope of that, and have people, remember me for that, is like, not just kind of putting out bullshit, like actually like, doing something that's meaningful, and like, actually does something. So I mean, the bands or artists that like, I would say, I mean, the first one that kind of comes to my head, I guess, is more of a like a modern relevant version of that. But like, I mean, Kendrick Lamar kind of does that in a way, like, I feel like there's like a uniting kind of feel to like what he does, as far as like music and the messaging goes, as far as just like kind of creating, trying to improve people's character as well. But I guess as far as like bands go, one of my all-time favorite bands is a band called The Cure.
Okay.
Yeah, I love Robert Smith. He is, I should say, he's still alive. He's amazing. And you know, they just put out a record like last year, and it sounds like it could have been put out like 30 years ago. It still feels so, but it still feels fresh as well. Another artist of mine, another artist that's a favorite of mine, I guess more in sort of the rock and alternative genre, is a guy named Jeff Buckley.
Hmm.
You know, as far as like the more arty kind of pushing, you know, something that's like a bit more kind of experimental, a bit more kind of off kilter, while also just like something that like really touches your soul. I think that's like a really important person in my upbringing. You know, I mean, there's a lot of different bands. The first band that I ever got into, funnily enough, was a band called Blink-182. You've heard of them.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, that's a totally different kind of thing to the artists I've just mentioned. But like, I think they had the album that I got into them was this self-titled album in 2003. I was 7 years old when it came out, and it was what pushed me to learn guitar. But also, like, there's something about that record in particular, compared to the other ones that had a lot more sort of heart to them. Not to say I love the other Blink records as well, but there was something that was like quite emotional, and there was something that was maybe a little bit political about it as well. You know, but it kind of just had like a maturity to it. And funnily enough, Robert Smith from The Cure happened to be on that album as a
Hmm.
feature on one of the tracks towards the end of the album. So there's sort of like this. As I've gotten older, there's sort of like this Beautiful Mind-esque like mind map where, like, as I'm getting older, I'm starting to discover why I'm drawn to certain things, and they turn out, it like maybe by coincidence, that they're sort of all connected in a way. Another band sort of in a similar vein that I still love for their evolution is like Paramore. I just love
Hmm.
how they've kind of evolved their sound a lot, and their songwriting just gets better and better with every album. So yeah, that's
Oh
probably
yeah.
just to name a few. Like there is a lot. Like I could name hundreds, and I'm wearing this MF Doom chain, so like I love hip hop, I love rap music as well. So there's a lot of like, I don't know. I can draw from a lot of different places, but I feel like I'll just kind of stop there.
No, that's cool. I mean, I saw Paramore. I've seen him like 3 or 4 times. They co-headline with Fall Out Boy, who was,
Yep.
at one point they were my favorite band. And yeah, just the showmanship of Haley Williams, how entertaining they are, and
The
um
energy.
oh yeah. I don't know how. I don't know how you guys do it. Being a front man and being like a lead singer, and having to, you go around the stage and get people psyched, and because I mean, the casual audience, it's like, I would relate this to football. If you're watching football, everyone is focused on where the ball is. It's hard to
Yeah.
look away, right? The casual audience, even the regular audience, like the more, fine tuned, it's hard to look at what other players are doing because they don't have the football, right? Well, it's kind of the same thing in music. When you go to a concert, like, the casual audience is going to look at the lead singer. So the eyes are always on you. And it's like, it's kind of up to you to, because I mean, immediately you can tell if somebody's bringing it or not. And I mean, I have not seen you guys live yet, but I've seen videos of you live, and I could see you definitely bring the energy. I'll say that. So,
Yeah.
uh, you know, but
It
yeah,
was,
no,
I mean, the energy thing. I mean, I'll name another band from America that haven't that they're not around anymore, but that they were an inspiration as far as energy and performance goes, and it's a band called At the Drive-In. I don't know if you remember them.
hmm.
They were sort of a they probably would hate me labeling them this, but like a sort of punk and hardcore band in the 2000s, and
Okay.
they were notorious for these energetic performances. You know, there's a really historical performance at an Australian music festival that used to run in the 90s and 2000s called Big Day Out, and they were one of the bands at the year that they played where uh, they were like the really hyped up, like every band on that bill was looking forward to seeing this band play. And it ended up ending kind of early. Like there was some sort of controversial thing where the crowd was like kind of being a bit like unsafe and erratic, and they were just
Ooh.
like they were kind of, I don't know how to put this. Like, they weren't like making fun of them, but they were kind of telling them to stop, like, because they were kind of a band that was energetic and kind of had the energy of a punk and hardcore band, but then they also had the artistic vision of a band that was like way beyond their years and way more experimental than people gave them credit for. And I think that they wanted the audience to kind of appreciate that side of it a bit more, but they were kind of more just like sticking to this like really like, I don't know, dangerous kind of like crowd participation, and so they ended up kind of leaving the stage earlier. There is a story behind it. I'm probably not telling it super accurately, but the stories are out there. Yeah, and At the Drive-In would have been responsible for, as part of my upbringing, for as being an inspiration to bringing such energetic and passionate performances. So yeah, I just thought I'd mention that.
No, I like that. So how did you get into all this? I mean, aside from, the influences and all that, like what
Yeah.
actually got you in the door?
Music's been a part of my life since I was in utero. Like, I was in the womb. My parents would they would often tell me, as I was growing up, that they would play like quite loud music, to my mother's stomach, while I was in the womb. And my dad was a drummer, in some bands, mostly just like cover bands and stuff like that. But
So was my
so
dad.
yeah, shout out to dads that play drums and music.
Hell
So
yeah.
yeah, my dad taught me sort of from an early age about the drums, and was always playing like Nirvana and like Pearl Jam, and like sort of like that 90s grunge movement was like
Mm.
playing a lot in my house. Rage Against the Machine, Audio Slave, um, and yeah, my dad was responsible for introducing a lot of music to me. My mum too, like I'm a massive Queen fan, because
Love
of
it.
my mum. Freddie Mercury is definitely one of my like vocal idols. Um, and yeah, it's sort of always been in my life. But then weirdly enough, there was like a certain point, sort of in my early childhood, probably from like, I don't know, 4 years old to 7 years old, where like I just really despised a lot of the music that I was sort of hearing and seeing on like music video shows. There was sort of like, I've grown up to appreciate it a lot more now, but I remember like, sort of not really liking the sort of Britney Spears-esque, like boy band-esque kind of music. And that's not to say, like I said, I can appreciate it a lot more now that I've grown up, and I understand it a little bit more. But I remember just as a boy at the time, like it was not what I was interested in, and I remember having such a disdain for, like like I I mentioned Blink-182 earlier, and I remember watching those music video shows, just waiting for the Blink-182 music video, like the one time that they would come on, and I'd have to wait through like an hours and hours of like kind of
Oh,
like pop music that I just like corporate pop music that I just never really liked. The only other one that I did really like, that was kind of in that era, that was kind of removed from like rock and pop music, but still somewhat connected, was a group called NERD,
mm.
who most famously had Pharrell Williams. That was Pharrell's like group back
Okay.
in the 90s and 2000s, and I
Yeah.
loved Pharrell. I thought he just like embodied like this coolness factor, that I was incredibly attracted to. And so that kind of also opened me up at a young age to sort of R&B and hip hop. But I sort of didn't know it at the time. It was sort
Mm.
of like, it wasn't until sort of over time, as I got older, I was like, hey, I think this person might have been my entry point into these kind of styles of music, and the way it makes me feel. Like you mentioned before, like our music kind of having like the heavy stuff and like the melodic stuff. And
Yeah.
to me, that kind of is less to do, like, as I've gotten older, it's less to do with genres to me, and it's more to do with how music makes you feel. I think music is like kind of like this weird form of magic. like literal like magic, because it can kind of take you to a place. It can transport you to a memory or a location or just a feeling. And it's really just air and vibrations that are kind of getting sent to your head.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is. It is. I've been told that I'm a musician. Sorry, a magician, I should say. I am a musician, but it's like, to be able to control that is kind of magic. And I always kind of keep that in the back of my head when we're talking about music.
No, absolutely. And before you started, even before you started with Windwaker, was that your first band, like when you first were there, or did you have bands beforehand?
I mean, I played in like bands in like high school. Nothing like of particular like notoriety, but like we would, sort of play like the sort of local shows, the battle of the bands and that sort of thing. I was always like really attracted to performing, because I'm not like a particularly like extroverted person. I mean, I might come across like a bit like, friendly and confident in that, but I love kind of my own space. I grew up as an only child. Like I retreat into this sort of introverted state. But and so when it comes to like social interactions, I'm not like the most like out there kind of person, but there's like a place of comfort when I'm on stage. And so yeah, I did play like in bands, and in high school there was a group that I was playing in alongside Windwaker when I first joined, and I was playing guitar and doing backing vocals, and that band's called Reside. It's sort of my other music project. It's sort of more punk emo inspired, a bit more melodic, and then before that I was also doing I dabbled in like hip hop and rap as well, like as a solo thing. Which there's music out there, but I'm gonna like keep it a secret for people to just discover if they know, they know. Because it's like it's aged quite a bit. It was like, this was like, over 10 years ago now. So
Oh wow.
yeah. So but like that sort of influence has obviously kind of bled into what I do with Wind Waker now. So I feel like it's still relevant, but it's more so to make the point that it comes from a genuine place. It comes from a place that, it's just what I've grown up doing and grown up being attracted to. So yeah, I played in a couple of bands, but I guess those were sort of the most notable. Like Reside was or is a band that we got to tour around Australia and sort of make some fans overseas, but never really like kind of break out of that of our own territory. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. It reminds me a little bit like Dustin Bates' Starset. Like he started off with Downplay, and
Okay.
you still have that kind of cult following. I'm sure you still probably have that cult following with Reside, and then those people that you've already gotten, well, they follow you over to your next stop, which is Windwaker, and
Yeah.
I'm sure like you've seen that. And then you build upon that. Because, I mean, that's kind of what we're doing here. I have a big following, covering sports. And now the hope is that people like what I'm doing so much that they're like, all right, yeah, let's listen to him interview a metalcore vocalist. You know what I mean? So
I think that's such a cool pivot, though. Like, and the fact that you were like before able to draw those comparisons with like watching the ball, like I think that's like such a great metaphor for like
yeah.
with music. I think you get it. I think you understand it. So it's like, that's really awesome. I love that pivot, and it's just like, again, it comes from this place of like authenticity to you. I think that's really great. It's something that you're passionate about, and people will see that.
I try, man. I mean, I can tell you're really passionate about what you're doing too. So that's really cool. And I think like with Windwaker, because I think it's so fascinating. So you joined the band. I have down here, you joined the band 2017 through 2020 as a guitarist and backup vocalist.
Yeah.
And then, you did end up leaving the band. Then you came back as lead singer. So take me through all that. Cause like, how did this, go down?
Yeah. Well, like I suppose that's a good thing that I sort of mentioned Reside, because now you kind of have an idea of sort of why and where things
Yeah.
were at. So I had joined the band around 2017. I played with them a little bit before that
Mm.
as well, but it was very, very early on in the band, and it wasn't sort of like the band hadn't sort of really become a serious thing at that point. Um, but I was playing guitar and backing vocals, and we were um, working on an EP called Empire, which ended up coming out in 2019. And that was sort of our breakout record. Is sort of what led us to forming the management, booking, like the team, the record label team that we have today. It started with this EP called Empire, and you can hear my vocals all over that all over that record. But it sort of it got to a point where I was doing Reside and Windwaker at the same time, trying to balance touring, trying to balance commitments, but both bands were trying to develop at the same time. And it got to a point where I was having to miss shows with Windwaker because I was fronting and singing for Reside. And it kind of got to a point where if I stayed in both bands, it would serve as a detriment to both bands. And like, these guys are my friends, and I don't want to hold them back. So I was like, I need to make a decision here. And Reside always felt like, because it was sort of a band that I'd started, I was like a primary songwriter. It sort of um, felt appropriate for me to kind of see that through and follow through on that. So I left around 2019. Played my last show in January 2020 at a festival called Unify Gathering. It's no longer a festival in Australia anymore, but it was like a pretty big alternative and metal festival that went over multiple days. People camped, and both my bands happened to be on the lineup.
That's cool.
Which was really cool. So I got to play on multiple days, and play my last show with Windwaker, and then this was in 2020, and we had these big aspirations. We're working on a new record, and obviously we know what happened in March of 2020, so all of those sort of plans got put on hold. I did work on a lot of music with Reside, but obviously there was just like an increased level of difficulty. We were an independent band. We were a little bit more smaller in popularity to Windwaker, and really kind of had to go through the motions of the pandemic. Being in Melbourne, we had the longest lockdown period in the world.
I
Which
remember
was
seeing that from
yeah.
afar. Like I was like, wow.
And look, I mean, if I'm being like totally transparent, like it was great at first because I had so much time to work on my passion and work on music. But because there was so much back and forth of like eventually going back to work for a couple of weeks and then going back home, and like I think there got to be about 7 or 8 lockdowns, and by the fifth, sixth, and seventh, I was like really like over it, and I really fell into a big depression. And around that time, I was sort of watching Windwaker develop, and I was super happy for them, but also I was sort of like having this like, oh, what could have been if I had like made a different choice. I think things happen for a reason. I think like the way that it happened was meant to be what it was. But yeah, the guys released Love Language in 2022. Sort of had some issues, obviously, with the pandemic. So they started a tour, in the lead up for that album, and then it kind of got cancelled or rescheduled and pushed back. But they were gaining such popularity, and I was sort of watching from the sidelines. I actually, in some capacity, I'm on that record as like a group vocalist. We had like these like gang vocals and like choir vocals, and so
Oh wow.
I was included as part of that, which was really cool. I felt really, really grateful for that, and I remember getting to hear some of the music the Windwaker were making for Love Language, and kind of in my own way comparing it to what I was doing with Reside, and kind of going, oh wow, like there is a standard here that I need to almost uphold, and it was great because it challenged me to push myself further creatively.
That's great.
Um, and then uh, gets to, where are we? 2022. So we're out of lockdowns and pandemic, and I get a call sometime around August or September, and it's Indy, our bass player in Windwaker, and he told me basically that Will was leaving the band, and asked me if I wanted to audition. And at that time with Reside, it sort of wasn't progressing like I was hoping it would. We'd sort of lost a lot of momentum due to like what had happened with COVID-19, and so it felt like the logical choice for me to just like give it a go, like to be given a second or a third chance at this band. It's sort of like, well, clearly the universe is telling me something, that like I'm meant to be playing with these guys. And you know, I guess maybe there's some aspect of me that like is attracted to singing and fronting a band, and it felt really right at the time. So I auditioned, and yeah, I got the part, and and yeah, so the rest is kind of history. You know, we've released an album since then, and a series of songs, and that we're all very proud of, and we've been very grateful to see the growth of the band, despite, you know, changing lead singers. You know, that's not an easy feat.
No.
But yeah, the fact that we kind of came away from that unscathed, or had managed to kind of progress further despite that is incredible. And yeah, again, I'm very grateful for that.
Well, it's not a surprise though, because obviously they were really talented, and obviously nothing against the previous lead singer, but it's just like you were so natural in that role. Like it's just, I don't know if you're a fan of Dragon Ball, but it reminds me of when Frieza's like, I'm in my final form. Like, that's how I feel. Like, I feel like, yeah, okay, now I know I just found you guys last year, but it feels like you guys are in your final form now. It's like, all right, now to the moon, right? I mean, that's where you guys are going. I think I feel, you know,
I feel that way with the band as well as myself as a person. Like there was a lot of change and growth that happened in my 20s. I'm 29 now as well, same age as you. And yeah, there's so much growth that happened just in each 12-month period, you know, going from, you know, 2019 to 2025 now. You know, it's yeah, as a person, I feel like I've kind of hit, maybe not my final form, but like definitely a much more yeah, a much more secure and confident form. So yeah.
No, I love it. I think it's great. And I mean, I just feel like with this record, because I think so much you have everybody that does their job, the singer's great, guitarist, drummer, all that. The lyrics are great. But then you like the production isn't great, right? Like how many times have you seen where the record is almost perfect, but you can't get past the production? I feel like everything just, you know, came together in this. And keep in mind, this is totally unbiased. I didn't get to interview you before I listened to this. I found you out of just like, oh yeah, I have to still listen to you. I saw like, you know, you had hung out with somebody that follows me on Instagram, follows me for my content. But it's like, man, when I heard this, I'm not even kidding you. Like there were a lot of really good records last year. Nothing More came out with something, Crowbot. I mean, there were a lot of really good stuff.
Yeah.
And this is, in my opinion, this is the record of 2024. Like I fully believe that. I think from, you know, the lyrics, I think from the singing, the rapping, as my mom put it today when I showed her. I was like, yeah, I'm interviewing the lead singer of this band. Like, so is it a rap band? Like, what's going on here? It's like, but awesome. Yeah. Awesome. So it's like, it's really cool because I feel like everything came together, like the drums, the scream, like the harsh scream, the harsh vocals. That's something I got into later on in life. I can actually do it now, which I'm not into any bands. I have no musical bone in my body, but I do like belting out a scream in the car, listening to your tracks, you know?
It's cathartic. I mean, like, speaking of that, like I wasn't a screamer before I came to join when came to rejoin Windwaker as vocalist. I had to learn
Oh
that
wow.
like on the spot in the matter of like 4 months before, like, because I got the call
No
in like
pressure, Liam.
yeah, I got the call in September, had the audition, and then we had a tour with Enter Shikari in
Oh
November.
my god. So my
So
roommate, that's his favorite band.
yeah,
He's gonna watch this. He already loves what you guys are doing. Oh my god.
that's
You
awesome.
toured with his favorite band, Enter Shikari. He is gonna get
And
a
it was
kick
my
out of that.
first tour with the band, back with the
No
band.
way. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
it was like, and it was crazy because it was like, yeah, I had to like learn how to scream. I didn't know how to really do it. It was like speed running, learning, and I learned a lot about it, and I still am. But it was like 4 shows with them, and then straight on to like what we call a regional tour in Australia, which is like
Mm.
you go to like in Australia when you tour, you do like the main like capital cities of each state. But then on a regional tour, you have like the small towns in between. So we had one of those, which was like something like 21 dates,
Oh
like
wow.
straight on after, the Enter Shikari tour. And it's like, if there was anything that was going to like fast track me into being like a good vocalist for the band, it was going to be these first 2 tours that were just like back to back. We just like hit the ground running, and I just had to learn literally on the shows. Like, I think third show in, it was like, okay, I think I'm starting to get it now. But those first 2 shows were like rough. I don't normally get nervous before shows, but those shows I was like shitting myself.
I don't blame you. Because I don't even remember how I found out how to do harsh vocals. It just like one day I was like, oh, it just kind of came to me. But yeah, I can't even imagine. And it's just so funny because this takes me back to when we were. So I first got him into your band, and we're watching like YouTube on the big TV, and we're watching all of your crazy. I mean, the editing for your music videos is wild. Like, it's so good.
Well, thank you.
And like we're watching it, and he's like, this reminds me of old Shikari. Like, that's what he told me. It's like, oh my god. He's like, I bet you anything that they were inspired by Shikari, like to some capacity. So I think that's so cool.
That tour definitely inspired some of the songs that came out of the Hyperviolence sessions.
Love it.
I mean, some of us were already fans of the band, but I think we became more fans watching them perform. If anybody out there's listening gets the opportunity to see Enter Shikari live, they really should, because like, it's one thing on the record, but them doing it live, like, Rao is an incredible frontman. Like, we talking about energy earlier, like, he is such an energetic performer. He's got the dance moves, but he's also got the singing and the screaming down. Like, he's impeccable.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, he's told me, my roommate, his name is Jake as well.
Shout out Jake.
Yeah, he's told me, he's like, man, you gotta see Enter Shikari. He got me into, I forget the name of it, but yeah, one of their most recent records I really liked. But yeah, I thought that was so cool, like that little synergy there. What would you say are some of the best moments? I know your career is very young. I mean, we're both 29, but I got some stuff I look back on. I'm like, that is I mean, like this, I think this is going to be huge. Maybe not in the short term. Maybe it's going to be hard to get a bunch of football fans to come over and, look at a metalcore interview. But I think over the course of time, I think you're just going to continue to ascend. You really remind me of the band I Prevail, and I watched them take off like after they came out with that Taylor Swift cover, Blank Space. Yeah. And I just remember them taking off, and it was like, oh my god. Like, and it's hard because like, it's not the most popular genre. Like, it's just not. It should be. Like, rock should run the world. It doesn't. We know that. But
it used to at one point in time, and I think things just go through their phases, and if we have to be, I'm so glad you mentioned I Prevail, because they're another band that Windwaker got to tour with around Australia. That's awesome. But before I had sort of rejoined the band, it was sort of in that interim period.
Gotcha.
And but they're homies of ours. They're on our label, Fearless Records. You know, we love those guys a lot, and yeah, if we have to sort of be the bands that kind of brings that next generation of rock music. I mean, like we're calling it metalcore, but like you said, it's kind of rock music, really.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, like, if we can sort of bring a flavor that's sort of, you know, drawing from a lot of different places, whether it's drawing from pop music, whether it's drawing from hip hop music, whether it's, you know, drawing from whatever, dance music, um, and kind of bringing it into the rock genre, but not doing it in a way where I feel like there was a certain era of bands trying to do that in like the late 2000s and early 2010s, and it kind of I feel like maybe the world wasn't ready for it, or maybe it wasn't executed in a way that, like, because I certainly didn't really like find myself attracted to it, but now being a bit older, kind of as music's kind of evolved and changed and listening habits have changed, like, you know, if we have to be like, so be it. Like, I'm really, you know, happy to be a part of that movement, if there is such a one. But yeah.
As far as okay, because yeah, I totally got you off the
Yeah,
question.
I went on a tangent then. I'm really sorry.
I don't blame
do
you.
that sometimes.
Well, we both do. I'll be like, I'll be the guy that asks the question and then be like, oh yeah, what was that question? Yeah, the moments.
You were asking me about moments. Okay, yes.
Best moments.
Best moments. All right, getting to play on Slipknot's Knotfest.
Oh, I saw
festival. Yeah, earlier last year. It was actually, yeah, probably about 10 to 12 months ago now. It was like the perfect way to like start the year after like just joining the band, kind of going through these two tours, and we got to showcase a little bit more of the new music, and sort of less of me doing the karaoke of the old music. No, that was amazing. That's probably the biggest crowd I've ever gotten to play in front of. I think it was like 18,000 people or something like that.
That's crazy.
And doing that sort of those numbers like over 3 days was like such a major learning experience. And yeah, I guess like getting to come to America for the first time last year was a highlight as well. Getting to visit these cities, and places that, you know, I've grown up sort of observing and hearing about, and, you know, learning about through like music and cultural movements, and getting to sort of see it firsthand as well. It was really eye opening, but also like I had such a deep appreciation for it. So like that was definitely like those two things especially were like major highlights. And yeah, getting to just release an album through a record label, and see, you know, such support and praise for it. I think that was something really special. Those are some of my best moments so
That's
far.
awesome. Yeah, well, there's plenty of more on the way. I mean, you guys are still so young, and I mean, we both are. I mean, 29 years old, man. Like, you know, everyone talks about, oh no, 30 years old, but I'm looking at it like, you know, think about it. You know, you got this record out. The next record's going to be even better. It's just going to continue to go on. So, hopefully, like that's what we want. Yeah. But now with, you know, as far as the flip side of that, what have been, you know, if maybe not one or two, like what have been some obstacles that you've had to overcome, you know, in this field essentially?
Yeah. I mean, like in a general sense, or like with Windwaker specifically, or
I'd say in a general sense.
In a general sense, I think I've had to learn to be a lot more thicker skinned. I have to be like a lot more have to be a lot more understanding about where criticism or where opinions come from, when it comes to sort of being. I've had to overcome sort of the fear of being in a public kind of space. You know, like by no means am I like some world famous celebrity or anything like that, but
yeah.
But at the same time, you know, like getting over, you know, any sort of self doubt, especially coming in as like a new vocalist or a new frontman, you know, like having to fill shoes of a vocalist that was already beloved by our fan base. So kind of gaining that confidence to be like, no, I'm comfortable in my own skin. I'm comfortable with my identity, and like if you don't like it, then like that's fine. I couldn't really give a shit. But
Tell
that's
them.
something that's something that's had to take time, you know. And like I have to find that balance too, because I've always grown up to be someone with humility and to be humble as well, you know. Like I'm, but there's a balance, you know. Like I think people are attracted to confidence, you know, but I don't ever want to kind of go to that extra point where it's like it turns into arrogance, you know what I mean? Like there still has to be some level of awareness in, as you know, in your place in the world. So yeah, I think those sort of like not being so sucked into like online communities and what they have to say is just something that's sort of been an obstacle, but at the same time it's been like a very valuable and worthwhile experience to learn. So I think that would be something.
Well, that hit close to home. I
Yeah.
feel the same way, man. Yeah, it's, I think what a lot of people forget, especially online, is like we're all growing. And when, somebody says something, say from 2017 as opposed to 2025, like I can't even tell you how different of a person I am from that. Like the,
Yeah.
the analysis I was giving at the time. I mean, I started YouTube in 2020. I was a sports writer, starting in 2016. And it's just so funny. I look back and I'm like, I'm not that far off from what I would want to say in 2025, but it's not the same way I would say it. Maybe,
Yeah.
the vocabulary has definitely like increased. I'd say I'm smarter than before. And I feel like that also, coincides with kind of like what you're saying. And especially as a musician, like you're getting better each year. You're getting more experience.
Yeah.
You have to go. And I think this is another thing is when you're creating this music, like, unfortunately, we have to go through some of those unfortunate things in life to kind of breed that confidence to then create something out of thin air. And obviously, I hope you don't have to go through, too many bad things, but those things do lead to, however you deal with them. And oftentimes it's music.
I completely agree, and I know I keep saying this phrase, but like everything sort of happens for a reason. I think that there's, as long as you can kind of reflect and acknowledge the growth and maybe gain a better understanding of why you might have felt that way at the time and where you're at now. I mean, like I think about where I was, 15 years ago, and like what my views of the world were, and learning more and more and getting smarter, like you said. And like I've definitely changed, like I felt like when I was a teenager I was like an angry young boy, and like I'm still angry, but for in different ways and for different reasons, like I have a greater understanding as to what I was annoyed about and what maybe illusions that I had put myself under. And now I'm in a place where it's just like, oh, I have a greater understanding of not just who I am as a person, but like the way that the world works a bit more as well. And yeah, so I feel like it's, as long as we can kind of take that time to reflect on ourselves and not be so stuck in our ways, and to accept that we are continually growing. I think that's a really important thing for anybody to acknowledge.
Absolutely. And I think, as far as like with this record, there's so many different emotions, that I have when I'm listening to this. It's like happy, sad, like emotional, like as far as like being like angry almost. Like obviously I'm not angry listening to something so great, but there is like a like getting pumped up. And it's really cool. But I gotta ask you, I truly believe that this is the best record of 2024. How did you create what I would say is a masterpiece?
Thank you. I mean, it was. I mean, we didn't set out to like necessarily make a masterpiece, or we didn't set out to be like, all right, we're gonna make the album of the year or anything like that. But I think like it kind of had to happen the way that it did. Like the trials and tribulations of what I was sort of talking about before, stepping into this new role, the feeling of self-doubt, the feeling of uncertainty of like, how is this going to be received? How am I going to be received? Is all intertwined with like what the concept of hyperviolence is. It's it's about finding out who you are and the fight between that and what you're expected to be. And you know, we had like when I first rejoined, like there was some songs that had sort of began like forming, like as far as like the music goes, but like a lot of it we had sort of written in like short spaces of time, and I began to understand that what this record needed to be was it needed to be honest and it needed to be authentic to who I am, because like the record before Love Language was something that was for Will, our old singer, like that was his story and that was his journey. And I felt like, well, I have to do the same thing with Hyperviolence. You know, it's about me, and it's sort of in a way it's about what I've observed in the world, but it's about how I feel about that, and it's about kind of the grinding feeling that I had where I was just like, I know that I have to be true to myself while also being aware that there's a certain expectation of what is required of me, whether that's certain vocal abilities or, you know, having a certain persona. And that's kind of also plays a part, you know, like what personas and what masks you kind of put on to kind of serve other people, and getting to a point where you're like, I don't need that. I don't need to have that anymore. I understand myself better for it. And I think what we just, when we were writing the record, I think what we just did was try to take what foundationally we loved about, you know, our previous work, but also like refine and be a bit more focused. And we just set out to just write good songs. Like it wasn't like we were like, all right, this is a concept album. Even though in a way I see it like that. I see it like a concept album. It's really just a collection of songs that we feel are like good songs, and we wanted every song to be a single in a way. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think that's the thing, is that when people think of masterpiece, like, oh, it all comes together in like a story. It doesn't even have to. I mean, like that was the vibe I got. It's a collection of amazing songs. Like there's not one song, and I'm not one of those people that skips, because I think you have to listen to a full record. It's kind of ridiculous when people just skip around and like, yeah, I mean, I'm totally taking a shot at one of my co-hosts, but my co-host Alexis, she's like, yeah, I saved 3 songs from this record. I'm like, come on, like save the record, listen to the record. It's meant to be played, you know, in an action. It's called a record because, and she's actually getting big into, you know, records. She got a record player and all that. Yeah, that's nice. Why it's called a record.
That's right. And like, that's part of like what's like confused me about like playlists now. Like I get that you can have a collection of songs that you like, but like an album is always going to be, it has to tell that complete story, not necessarily like a story as in a narrative like you're saying, but like, you know, and I love records as well. Like I have a record player. What I love about it is it induces active listening. You know, rather than passive listening, where you kind of got it in the background, you're doing other shit. Like active listening, where you're putting on the record, when it gets to the halfway mark, you flip it over. Like those were all considerations that we had. We were like, we're going to put certain songs at certain places for the sheer fact of like playing a record, being like, all right, we've gotten to the end of side A now. That's the conclusion of this first half. Let's flip it over now. Like, yeah, I think that's a really important thing, and it's something that I hope that still continues as a tradition, even though, you know, the landscape of music's kind of changing, you know, with technology and listening habits and social media and blah. It's like I hope that sort of still remains for some people, and I'm so glad to hear that it does for you, Jake.
Oh yeah, no, it's awesome. I don't have a record player, unfortunately, in my apartment, but I just have a lot of respect for just that full. You know, I gotta listen to the full thing. I mean, I'm not against playlists. I'm not, but you know, when there's time to listen to a full record, well, you know, I always have time for that. Now, I gotta ask you 2 more quick things here. One, what's your favorite song off the record?
Okay. Well, it sort of changes, but I think the most consistent one to answer is Hypnotized. That's probably my favorite song off the album.
I like it, but I like every song. So
yeah, no, I just
mine's
like
break
that
the
one.
rules though. I gotta say,
It's so fun and catchy. Like I get it. It's the song of the summer.
I'm just sitting there doing laundry, like. It's like I mean, I'm not the only one either. Like I showed it to my dad. I was having lunch with my parents earlier today, and my dad, I heard him like right after I showed him it. I heard him like, it's just really catchy, man. It's really catchy.
That song was definitely one of the sort of Enter Shikari influence songs, I would say. I feel like that song is like if Enter Shikari and like Charlie XCX had a baby, that's Break the Rules.
I love it. That's awesome. So the last thing I'll ask you here, what should Windwaker fans or anyone jumping on the Windwaker bandwagon, because there are going to be people after this video, I'm telling you.
I hope so.
And you deserve it, because for people like you that are willing to take time out of your busy schedule, you're preparing for a tour, you're going to come over to the States, you got a lot of stuff to do. You got, songs, all that stuff. And plus you have the expansion pack coming out. So you got to, there's just a lot of different things. So the fact that you're doing this, you're going to get people from my audience, I'm telling you right now, that will check you out and will vibe with what you're doing, and you deserve it. But with that said, the bandwagon, the fans that are becoming fans now, maybe in the future, what should we all be expecting from you guys moving forward as an up and coming metalcore band?
All right. Wow, that's a broad question, but I'll try my best. Well, we're gonna be coming to a lot of different places. We're in February, March, a couple months time. We're gonna be in the States. I hope that we're gonna be coming back there a lot more after this tour. We're already working on the next record. We've been working on some songs that I'm feeling pretty good about.
Hell yeah.
And yeah, we're going to be hopefully doing a little bit more collaborating. We do a lot of stuff DIY and in-house, and I think it's probably about time that we start shaking up the process a little bit more. So we want to do a lot more collaborating with other artists, and whether it's, just trying out different producers and seeing what kind of comes out from that. And hopefully a band that's, pushing the envelope of what rock music and metal music and pop music can be. That's really all I can really hope for, and hopefully in the process sort of bringing people together and finding this common ground, of a love of this magic that we call music. So yeah.
No, absolutely, Liam. I'll say this to wrap it up, man. You've been great. This is one of the best interviews I've ever done, regardless of football, anything, right?
Wow.
And I mean that. Like, this has been awesome. I'm going to throw one suggestion in the suggestion box here. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
I want you guys to play, and they haven't had an opener the last few times, but I want you guys, if you can, to find a way to tour with Starset. I'm telling you. You guys are it meshed so well. I don't know if you've heard them before or played with them or anything, but
I haven't played with them. I've definitely heard of the band, and I may know their songs, but might not know them as Starset songs. But yeah, I'll definitely try to make that happen for you, Jake.
Hell yeah,
best night ever.
I've seen them 13 times. So if I could see them with Windwaker, you can't beat that. You can't.
That's awesome. I hope to one day fulfill your wish, Jake.
Oh, I appreciate that. So yeah, hopefully we get that. But guys, hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to check out Liam. I'll have all of your socials posted below, Liam, as well as Windwaker, and where people can go and listen to this stuff, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, it'll all be down below in the description. Once again, appreciate you and your team, because they made this happen as well. You guys are all awesome, and appreciate you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to hit that like button if you did, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys next time.